They say New York never stops moving. Taxis honking on Fifth Avenue at 3 a.m., steam rising from subway grates in the winter cold, the perpetual hum of millions of lives intersecting for just a moment before moving on. It's a city that teaches you to keep your head down, to keep moving, to never let anyone see you crack. But on a soundstage in Queens, under fluorescent lights and surrounded by green screens, I learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop. I was 21 when I met Tom Holland. Not the Tom Holland the world sees, the charming British actor who does backflips on talk shows and makes interviewers laugh with his boyish energy. I met the Tom who existed in the spaces between takes, in the quiet moments when the cameras weren't rolling and the world wasn't watching. We were filming Spider-Man Homecoming, and I was terrified. Not of the stunts or the long hours or even the scrutiny that would come with joining the Marvel universe. I was terrified of being the new girl who didn't belong, who would mess up her lines or ruin a take or somehow prove that everyone's faith in me was misplaced. Tom was already Spider-Man by then. He'd done Civil War, charmed his way through press tours, and become the face of a franchise that meant everything to so many people. And me? I was just trying not to trip over cables on set. The day we met properly, not in a table read or a quick introduction, but really met, started like any other. The production had taken over an old warehouse in Long Island City, transforming it into Midtown High School. The smell of fresh paint mixed with coffee from craft services, PAs rushed past carrying props. Someone was always yelling about lighting. I was in hair and makeup, getting MJ's signature look locked down, when I heard the commotion outside, voices rising, then falling, a door closing too hard, the kind of disruption that makes everyone pause for just a second before pretending they didn't notice. When I walked onto set 15 minutes later, Tom was standing alone near the monitors. His back was to me, phone pressed to his ear, shoulders rigid in a way that looked wrong on someone usually so loose and animated. Even from across the room, I could feel it. Something was off. Directors were conferring in a huddle. The DP was checking shots. Everyone was doing their job, moving around this one still point like water around a stone. I should have minded my business. I barely knew him. We'd exchanged maybe 10 sentences total, mostly about blocking and eye lines. But something in the way he stood there, isolated in a room full of people, reminded me of every time I'd felt that same loneliness. New York has a way of making you feel invisible even when you're surrounded by millions. And fame? Fame makes it worse because people see you everywhere, but almost no one really sees you. I didn't walk over right away. I watched as he ended the call, as his hand dropped to his side, still gripping the phone, as he took a breath that looked like it hurt. And then, before I could talk myself out of it, I crossed the soundstage. "Hey," I said quietly, stopping a few feet away. "You okay?" He turned, and for just a second, I saw his face before he could rearrange it into something more acceptable. Red-rimmed eyes, jaw tight, the look of someone trying desperately to hold something together that had already started to break. Yeah, I'm fine," he said, automatically, voice a little too bright. "Just, family stuff, nothing major." We both knew he was lying, and we both knew that I knew. But this was the dance, wasn't it? The performance we all give when we're falling apart, but the show must go on. I could have left it there. Should have, probably. But I thought about all the times I'd put on that same smile, given that same answer, and wished someone would have just called me on it. So instead, I said, "You don't have to pretend with me." 6 words. That's all it took. His expression changed. Not dramatically, not like in a movie where someone breaks down in tears. It was subtler than that. Just a small shift, a lowering of a guard he didn't even know he was holding up. He started, then stopped. looked away toward the lights, the cameras, the constructed reality we were all working so hard to build. "My grandfather," he finally said, "he's in hospital. It's not, they don't think he has much time." They didn't shoot our scenes together that day. Tom's publicist arrived within the hour, and there were hushed conversations with the director and producers. Plans were rearranged, schedules shifted. By early afternoon, Tom was on a plane back to London, and I was left wondering if I'd done the right thing. The next 2 weeks of filming felt strange. We shot around his absence, my scenes with other cast members, technical setups, B-roll footage of New York streets. I wandered through Greenwich Village between takes, grabbing coffee at tiny cafes where no one bothered me because everyone in New York has learned the art of strategic obliviousness. I rode the subway to Brooklyn, watching the city blur past grimy windows, thinking about mortality and family, and how fragile everything really is beneath the surface. My mom called every night the way she always did when I was working. "How's it going, baby?" she'd ask. And I'd tell her about the scenes we'd filmed, the other actors, the long hours. But I didn't tell her about Tom. Didn't tell her about the look in his eyes or the weight of his grief or the way I couldn't stop thinking about those 6 words. "You don't have to pretend with me." Why had I said that? I barely knew him. It wasn't my place to see behind his armor, to witness his pain. But something had compelled me. Maybe recognition. Maybe the understanding that comes from spending your whole life performing, always aware of the cameras, even when they're not rolling. When Tom came back to set 3 weeks later, he looked different. Thinner, maybe. Older in a way that had nothing to do with time and everything to do with loss. His grandfather had passed 2 days after he'd arrived in London. He'd been there, which mattered, but he'd still lost someone he loved. And now he had to come back to Queens and pretend to be a teenager with superpowers. I saw him first in the production office, a converted loft space in Dumbo with exposed brick and too much natural light. He was talking to the director, nodding at something being explained, doing the professional thing. But when he glanced up and saw me across the room, something in his expression softened. Later, when we were both waiting between setups, he approached me. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" "For seeing me that day. For not—" He paused, searching for words. Everyone else was so busy pretending nothing was wrong. And I get it, they were trying to be professional, not make me uncomfortable. But you just asked. We were standing near a window overlooking the East River. It was late afternoon, and the water caught the light in a way that made everything look golden and temporary. Below us, a ferry cut through the current, carrying people home. "My grandmother died when I was 15, I said, right in the middle of filming Shake It Up. And I remember everyone being so careful around me, like I was made of glass. But what I really wanted was for someone to just acknowledge that it hurt, that it was okay to hurt." Did anyone? Eventually, but not right away. Not when I needed it most. Tom nodded slowly. "That's exactly it. Everyone kept saying, 'Take all the time you need.' But what they meant was, take a few days, then come back and be Spider-Man again. Like, grief has a schedule. Does it get easier?" "I don't know yet," he said honestly. "But I think maybe it matters that someone asked." That was the beginning. Not of a romance. Not then, anyway. But of a friendship built on the foundation of being seen. Really seen. Not as the roles we played or the images we projected, but as the messy, complicated, grieving, hoping humans underneath. We started spending more time together off-set. Nothing dramatic, just coffee runs between scenes, sharing takeout in our trailers during night shoots, texting each other terrible memes at 2 a.m. when neither of us could sleep. New York became our backdrop, the city's constant motion, a strange comfort. We'd walk through Central Park on Sunday mornings when I had a rare day off, or sit on the steps of the Met watching tourists pose for photos, or grab pizza in the Village at places that didn't care who we were. "This is what I love about New York," Tom said once, sitting on a bench in Washington Square Park while a street musician played saxophone nearby. Everyone's too busy with their own drama to care about yours. Is that why you like it? The anonymity? Partly, but also, he gestured vaguely at the park, the people, the city sprawling out around us. It's real, you know? When we're on set, everything's controlled, scripted. But here, anything can happen. People are just living. The friendship deepened as filming continued through the summer. New York in July is its own kind of beautiful hell. Sweltering heat rising from the pavement, the smell of garbage and hot dogs and humanity all mixed together. Everyone moving a little slower, a little more irritable. But somehow we thrived in it. Tom taught me about British humor, the kind that's all about understatement and self-deprecation. I taught him about Oakland, about growing up in a family that valued authenticity over image, about my mother's fierce protection and my father's quiet strength. We traded stories between takes, finding the common threads in our very different lives. "The thing people don't understand," Tom said one night, sitting in my trailer while rain hammered the roof, "is that fame doesn't make you special, it just makes you visible. And visibility isn't the same as being seen." We were eating Chinese takeout from a place in Chinatown that stayed open until 3 a.m. Lo mein and dumplings and fortune cookies that neither of us believed in but always read anyway. "What's the difference?" I asked, even though I thought I knew. "Visibility is everyone knowing your face. Being seen is someone knowing your heart." He cracked open his fortune cookie, read it, smiled sadly. "Good things come to those who wait." Bit late for that. "Maybe it's never too late," I offered, but it sounded hollow even to me. The truth was, we were both struggling. Tom with his grief, which came in waves, fine for days, then suddenly drowning. Me with the pressure of being perfect, of representing something to people I'd never meet, of carrying the weight of expectations I never asked for. The press tour was coming. Soon we'd have to smile for cameras and answer the same questions 100 times and pretend that making the movie was nothing but fun and excitement. The performance would begin again. And this quiet space we'd carved out would shrink. "I don't want this to end," Tom said one August evening. We were on the roof of his hotel in Midtown, looking out at the city lights. The premiere was in 2 weeks. After that, he'd go back to London for a while. I'd return to LA for another project. And this strange, intense friendship forged in a few months would become something we had to maintain long distance. "It doesn't have to end," I said. "We'll still talk, still text, still, it won't be the same." He wasn't being dramatic, just honest. "This right here, this is special because it's happening now, because we're both in the same place, literally and figuratively. But life moves on. We'll move on." I wanted to argue, to insist that real friendship transcends distance and time, but I had been in this industry long enough to know the truth. Proximity matters. Shared experience matters. When the cameras stop rolling and everyone goes back to their separate lives, even the strongest bonds can weaken. "Then let's make the most of now," I said. We did. Those last 2 weeks before the premiere were perfect in the way things are when you know they're ending. We saw Hamilton on Broadway. Tom cried during It's Quiet Uptown, and I pretended not to notice. We went to a midnight showing of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind at an art house cinema in the Village. We walked the Brooklyn Bridge at dawn after an all-night shoot, watching the sunrise over the East River, while early morning joggers and commuters flowed around us. And we talked, really talked, about our fears and dreams, and the versions of ourselves we kept hidden, about his childhood in Kingston, my childhood in Oakland, about the first time we each realized we were going to be famous, and how terrifying that realization was, about loss and love, and the strange loneliness of being known by millions, but understood by almost no one. "I think you might be my best friend," Tom said, half joking but mostly serious. "I know I'm your best friend," I replied, completely serious. The premiere was everything and nothing. Flashbulbs and screaming fans and carefully orchestrated interviews. Tom and I smiled and laughed and played our roles perfectly. When asked about our off-screen friendship, we gave the approved answers. Amazing to work with. Such a professional. Really lovely person. We didn't tell them about the 3 a.m. conversations or the Chinese takeout or the way we learned to read each other's silences. We didn't tell them about the roof of his hotel or the bench in Washington Square Park or the moment on set when I'd said, "You don't have to pretend with me," and everything changed. Some things are too precious to share. Some connections exist outside the performance. After the premiere, at the after-party in some trendy Soho venue with too loud music and too bright lights, Tom found me on a balcony overlooking the street. "This feels wrong," he said. "What does?" "All of this, the party, the spectacle, like we're celebrating something that's already over." I understood what he meant. The movie was finished. Our time in New York was finished. This perfect, painful, transformative period of our lives was sliding into the past even as we stood there trying to hold on to it. "Maybe that's what we're really celebrating," I said. "Not the movie. The fact that we survived making it, that we found each other in the middle of all the chaos." He smiled, and it was real this time. Not the press smile or the Spider-Man smile, but the Tom smile I'd come to recognize. "Promise me something," he said. "What?" "That we won't let this become just a memory. That we'll fight for it, whatever it becomes." I didn't know then what it would become. Didn't know about the next 4 movies we'd make together, the countless press tours, the way our friendship would evolve into something deeper and more complicated. Didn't know about the tabloids and the speculation and the pressure that would come from the world's insistence on defining our relationship before we'd defined it ourselves. But I knew I wanted to fight for it. For him, for us. For the possibility that something real could survive in an industry built on illusion. "I promise," I said. Enjoying the story? Hit the like button, subscribe, drop your comment, and turn on the notifications. Let's keep going. The years that followed were a study in tension, the space between who we were to each other in private and who the world insisted we be in public. We made Far From Home, then No Way Home, and with each movie the connection deepened, even as we pretended it didn't exist. It was a strange dance. We'd film intimate scenes where Peter Parker looked at MJ like she was his entire world, and then we'd go to our separate trailers and text each other stupid jokes. We'd do press tours where interviewers asked pointed questions about our chemistry, and we'd deflect with practiced ease while our hands found each other under the table. Tom went through a very public relationship, so did I. We dated other people and posted about it on Instagram and did the things you're supposed to do when you're young and famous and the world is watching. And through it all, we texted, called, FaceTimed at odd hours when one of us couldn't sleep. "I miss New York," Tom said once, calling me from a hotel room in Berlin at 4 a.m. his time, 10 p.m. mine. "Which part?" I asked, even though I knew. "The beginning, when everything was simple." "It was never simple," I reminded him. "You were grieving. We barely knew each other. We were both terrified." "Yeah, but we were terrified together. Now we're just terrified separately, while pretending we're fine." He was right. Success had brought its own complications. More pressure, more scrutiny, more people depending on us to be certain things. And the safe space we'd created on that soundstage in Queens felt further away with each passing month. But then we'd find our way back. A text at the right moment, a phone call that lasted 3 hours, a stolen afternoon in whatever city we happened to both be in, where we could drop the performance and just be ourselves. It was during the No Way Home press tour that everything finally came to a head. We were in New York again, full circle, back where it all started. Different hotel, different soundstage, but the same city humming with life and possibility around us. We'd just finished a long day of interviews, the kind where you answer the same question so many times the words lose all meaning. How was it working together again? What was your favorite scene? How does it feel to be part of the MCU? Smile, laugh, deflect. Rinse and repeat. Back at the hotel, I found Tom on the same roof where we'd stood years ago. Different hotel, but he'd sought out the same kind of space. High enough to feel removed from the chaos, close enough to still feel the city's pulse. "I can't do this anymore," he said without preamble.
My heart dropped. Can't do what? Pretend. Act like this is just friendship. Like I haven't been in love with you since that first day on set when you told me I didn't have to pretend with you. The city noise rose up around us. Sirens and car horns and music from somewhere below. A typical New York symphony that suddenly felt like the most important soundtrack of my life. Tom! I know it's complicated. I know there are 1,000 reasons why this is a terrible idea. Our careers, the public scrutiny, the risk to everything we've built. But I've spent 5 years trying to talk myself out of this, and I can't. I don't want to. I looked at him, really looked at him. Not Spider-Man or the charming actor or the public figure, but Tom, the person who'd let me see his grief, who'd walked through Central Park with me on Sunday mornings, who'd taught me that being seen was different than being visible. "I've been in love with you too," I said quietly. "I just didn't know if I was allowed to be." "Allowed by who?" "Everyone. The studio, the fans, my team, your team, everyone who has an opinion about what we should be." "Fuck what they think," Tom said, and his vehemence surprised me. Tom, who was always so careful, so media-trained, so aware of his image. "I'm so tired of performing for everyone else. With you, I get to be real. And maybe that makes me selfish, but I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose you." "You won't," I said. "You couldn't. Even if this stays exactly what it is right now, you're not losing me." "But I want more than this," he insisted. "I want to stop pretending. I want to be able to hold your hand in public without it becoming a headline. I want to kiss you without worrying about who's watching. I want to just be with you. Really be with you." Below us, New York continued its endless motion. Millions of people living their lives, falling in love, taking risks, choosing each other despite the complications. Why should we be any different? Then let's stop pretending. They say New York never stops moving, and they're right. But sometimes, in the middle of all that motion, two people find each other and create a stillness that exists nowhere else. Tom and I didn't go public right away. We took our time, learning how to be together without the performance, figuring out what this thing between us really was before we let the world dissect it. We had quiet dinners in Brooklyn restaurants where no one bothered us. We walked through the village holding hands, testing the water. We stayed up too late, talking in hotel rooms and apartments and on rooftops, overlooking the city that had brought us together. When we finally went public, a casual Instagram post, our hands intertwined, the New York skyline behind us, the response was exactly what we'd feared and hoped for. Overwhelming support, intense scrutiny, think pieces about on-set romances and the blurred lines between fiction and reality. Our teams had conference calls about managing the narrative. Fans made videos and wrote stories and debated whether we'd been together all along. But through it all, we held on to something important, the truth of what we'd built. Not the version the world saw, but the real thing. The friendship forged in grief and understanding. The love that grew slowly, carefully, in the spaces between action and cut. "Do you regret it?" Tom asked me once, months after we'd gone public. We were back in New York. We always came back to New York, having brunch in the West Village on a Sunday morning. "Regret what? Falling in love with you or telling everyone about it?" "Either. Both." I thought about that day on set, 5 years earlier, when I'd crossed a soundstage and asked a question I didn't have to ask, about all the moments since then, the conversations and confessions and complications.
about learning to be seen, really seen, by another person. No, I said simply, I don't regret any of it. Because here's what I've learned. Life is complicated whether you're famous or not. Love is risky whether the world is watching or not. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop pretending, to stop performing and start living, even when it's messy and imperfect and everyone has an opinion. Tom's grandfather used to tell him that the most important things in life can't be scripted. You can't rehearse them or control them or predict how they'll turn out. You just have to show up honestly and hope that who you really are is enough. That day on set, I showed up honestly. I saw someone in pain and chose to acknowledge it instead of looking away. I said 6 words, "You don't have to pretend with me." And they changed everything. Not because they were magic or profound, but because they were true. And truth, I've learned, is the most powerful performance of all. It's also the hardest. Because when you stop pretending, when you let someone see all of you, the messy, complicated, imperfect reality, you're taking the biggest risk there is. But it's worth it. God, it's worth it. New York keeps moving. The city doesn't care about our story or anyone else's. It just keeps humming with life and possibility, indifferent to the small dramas playing out in its streets and soundstages and hotel rooftops. But within that indifference is a kind of freedom. The freedom to write your own story, to choose your own truth, and stop performing for everyone else and start living for yourself. Tom taught me that. Or maybe we taught each other. Maybe that's what love is. 2 people teaching each other how to be real in a world that demands performance. I don't know what comes next. More movies, probably. More press tours and red carpets and interviews where we'll be asked to explain our relationship in sound bites. More scrutiny and speculation and people who think they know our story better than we do. But I know this. Whatever comes, we'll face it honestly. Not as Spider-Man and MJ, not as the characters we play or the images we project, but as Tom and Zendaya. 2 people who found each other in the controlled chaos of a soundstage in Queens and learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop. Stop pretending. Stop performing. Stop trying to be what everyone else thinks you should be. Just stop and be seen. And maybe that's the real superpower, not the ability to climb walls or swing through the city, but the courage to be vulnerable, to be honest, to be yourself even when it's terrifying, especially when it's terrifying. Because in the end, the most powerful stories we tell aren't the ones scripted for us. They're the ones we choose to live. If you watched until here, thank you. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love reading your messages. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications so you never miss another story like this. And if you'd like to support the channel, you can buy me a coffee. Any amount helps a lot. Link in the pinned comment.